Hi, my name is Charlotte Hayes, and my family didn't just betray me, they tried to erase me. It started with whispers behind closed doors, escalated into cold silences at the dinner table, and ended in the one place I never imagined I'd face my own brother, a courtroom. Why? Because he wanted to take what my father left behind, not just the land, not just the old house, but the proof that I belonged, that I was my father's daughter, no matter what anyone else said. You see, I'm what my stepmother always called the complication, the daughter from Dad's first marriage, the one she never wanted to claim as part of her family. But Dad, he always reminded me, Charlotte, no matter what, you're mine. This home, this land, it's as much yours as anyone's. I didn't know, sitting at my kitchen table on that humid August night, that those words would soon be tested in ways that would break my heart. I live just outside Savannah, Georgia, in a restored farmhouse with white siding and a wraparound porch, the kind of place where cicadas hum in the summer evenings and Spanish moss drips from the oaks like silver curtains. My dad bought the property decades ago, long before he remarried. For as long as I can remember, that house has been the closest thing I've ever had to security. When Dad passed earlier that year, the house and a few acres of land became more than just real estate. They were his legacy, his promise. So when my stepmother, Linda, called to say she and my half-brother Ethan wanted to come by for dinner, I told myself this was a chance maybe to bridge the cracks, to remind them we were still family. That morning I scrubbed the farmhouse from top to bottom. I polished the oak table until it gleamed, laid out the good silverware Dad had given me when I moved in, and set fresh gardenias in a vase at the center. I even roasted chicken with rosemary, Dad's favorite, hoping it might stir some shared warmth. By 6:30, the sun was melting into the horizon, painting the fields in shades of orange and gold. I smoothed my dress, checked the roast one last time, and told myself, they'll see. They'll see I've made a life here, that I can take care of this place. The gravel crunched under tires just after 7. I stepped onto the porch as Linda and Ethan climbed out of a gleaming black SUV. Linda was immaculate as always. Her blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon, pearls at her throat, heels clicking against the porch steps. Ethan followed, tall, broad-shouldered, his suit jacket a little too sharp for a casual dinner. He carried himself like someone used to being admired, used to doors opening before he even knocked. "Charlotte," Linda said, her smile tight, "you've done well with the place. It looks cozy." Cozy. The word landed like a stone. "Thanks," I managed, stepping aside. "Come in." Inside, the air was warm with rosemary and garlic. I poured wine, a local Pinot Noir from a nearby vineyard, and tried to keep conversation light. But almost immediately, the imbalance showed. Linda complimented Ethan's new promotion at the tech startup in Atlanta, her voice brimming with pride. She asked about his recent trip to Miami, his new condo, his business contacts. Every question, every glance, every smile. It was all for him. When she turned to me, it was only to critique. "You really should consider painting these walls a brighter color. It's a bit dark. Do you manage the mortgage all by yourself? That must be stressful." "Still no plans for marriage, Charlotte?" I smiled politely, cutting my chicken into small bites, swallowing hard against the tightness in my chest. Dad had always said Linda's sharp edges weren't personal, just her way. But now, without him here to soften her, the barbs felt aimed with precision. Ethan, meanwhile, leaned back in his chair, spinning stories about late-night business calls and investment opportunities, flashing the confident smile that made people want to believe him. And Linda believed him. Oh, she believed him with her whole heart. By dessert, I realized not once had either of them asked about my work, about the farm, about how I'd been holding up since Dad's funeral. I was invisible in my own home. After we cleared the plates, Ethan set down his wine glass, the stem catching the candlelight. "Charlotte," he said smoothly, "Mom and I have been talking about the house, about the land, My chest tightened. What about it? He exchanged a glance with Linda before leaning forward, his tone almost sympathetic. You know, Dad wanted me to have this place. He said it countless times. It makes sense. I'm the one with the means to take care of it, to keep it in the family's name. The words hit like ice water. This house is mine, I said quietly. Dad put it in writing. Linda's eyes narrowed. Don't be difficult, Charlotte. You've always known you were here, temporarily. You don't even have a husband or children. What do you need with a house this size? Her voice was sharp, slicing through the candlelit calm. I forced my voice steady. Because it's my home. Because Dad gave it to me. Ethan's smile thinned. Or maybe you're just holding it until we sort things out. I stared at him. At the brother who'd grown up in the same house, eaten at the same table, laughed in the same backyard. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't a conversation. It was a warning. That night, after they left, after Linda's perfume faded from the hallway and Ethan's laughter no longer echoed in my ears, I sat at the oak table in silence. The candle had burned low, wax dripping down its side, casting long shadows across the room. Somewhere deep inside, I knew dinner hadn't been a visit. It had been the opening shot, and before long, the next step wouldn't come in whispers or tight smiles. It would come in the form of a letter, thick, official, stamped with the words, Civil Court Summons. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday morning tucked between the electric bill and a flyer for discount tires. It was heavy, too heavy to be junk mail. I stood in the kitchen, the cicadas buzzing faintly through the open window, my coffee turning cold as I turned it over in my hands. Across the front, Chatham County Civil Court. My name printed neatly underneath. For a moment, I thought maybe it was some kind of mistake, a clerical error. But when I tore it open, the truth hit me like a freight train. Plaintiffs, Ethan Hayes and Linda Hayes. Defendant, Charlotte Hayes. Cause breach of implied family inheritance agreement. The words swam, my breath caught. My own brother and stepmother weren't just hinting anymore than they were suing me. I sat down slowly, the kitchen chair creaking under my weight. The pages blurred as I scanned them, but one line burned clear. They weren't asking for a share. They were asking for everything. According to their petition, Dad had informally promised the house and land to Ethan alone, and I was occupying the property without rightful claim. Rightful claim. The phrase tasted bitter. I flipped to the last page and saw their signatures. Ethan's, bold and steady, like a man signing a business deal. Linda's, precise and sharp, just like her. My hands shook. The paper felt heavier than steel. I wanted to call someone, to scream, to drive straight to Ethan's condo in Atlanta and throw the papers at his polished shoes. But instead, I sat in silence. The only sound, the hum of the refrigerator, because deep down I knew this wasn't about confusion. It was about erasure. The next morning, I drove into downtown Savannah, past the oak-lined streets where horse-drawn carriages ferried tourists, until the courthouse loomed above me in gray stone. The law offices were tucked along the block, names etched in polished brass on glass doors. Inside one firm, I explained who I was, what I'd received. The young associate barely blinked. He skimmed the summons like he'd seen it 100 times. "You'll need your own counsel," he said, sliding the papers back across the desk. "But to be clear, this isn't just about inheritance. They're building a narrative. That you were never meant to live there, that you overstayed some family agreement." I shook my head, incredulous. There was never an agreement. Dad left the house to both of us in his will. He looked at me carefully. "Do you have a copy?" My stomach dropped. "I thought it was with Dad's things. After the funeral, I couldn't find it." He sighed. "Then you'll need to track it down. Without proof, it's just your word against theirs. And from what I've heard..." He hesitated. Your brother has already spoken publicly about this." "Publicly?" I asked. He nodded. "A podcast interview. Talked about family betrayal. Said he was promised the house, but you refused to honor your father's wishes." Heat flared in my chest. "That's a lie. He's never spent a single night there." "Then prove it," the associate said flatly, "because in court, stories don't matter. Evidence does." That night, I tore through every drawer, every box, every folder, receipts, tax returns, utility bills, all in my name, mortgage records with my signature, property taxes I'd paid on time every year. But the will was gone. At midnight, exhausted, I called the only person I trusted, Caroline, my childhood best friend, now a paralegal in Atlanta. Her voice sharpened as I explained. "Charlotte, they're setting a pattern. You need every scrap of evidence showing this house is yours, not just on paper, but in practice. Utilities, neighbors, witnesses, pull everything." "I can't believe I'm fighting my own family," I whispered. "Then stop thinking of them as family," she said gently. "Think of them as plaintiffs, and fight." 2 days later, while sorting mail I'd ignored for weeks, I froze. A white envelope addressed not to me, but to Ethan Hayes, at my address. Hands trembling, I tore it open. A bank statement, his account, listing my farmhouse as his legal residence. I drove straight to the bank branch the next morning, slapped the statement on the counter. The teller, a young man with nervous eyes, checked the system. "According to our records," he said carefully, "Ethan Hayes does live at that address. We have a notarized lease agreement on file." My heart slammed in my chest. "That's impossible. I never signed a lease." He hesitated, then tilted the screen slightly. I caught a glimpse of the document. A scanned form, blocky black letters. The signature at the bottom wasn't mine. It was Linda's. "That's your stepmother, right?" the teller asked softly. I forced the words out. "Yes, but she doesn't own that property. I do." He looked uncomfortable. "In family disputes, it happens. The system just records what's submitted." I walked out into the Georgia sun, the heat pressing down like a weight. The pieces were clicking into place. Linda's icy words at dinner, Ethan's smug confidence, the missing will. This wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan, and I was the target. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ethan's signature, Linda's neat cursive beneath it, stamped like a seal over my life. By dawn, I knew one thing. Hurt wouldn't win this case. Proof would. So I cleared off the kitchen table, dragged out the metal lockbox I kept under my bed, and spread out every document I owned. The deed was there. My name in bold, filed with the county clerk when I refinanced the house after Dad's surgery. The mortgage statement stacked in neat piles, each one with my payments in full. The property tax receipts, all signed by me, not Ethan, not Linda. But I needed more than paperwork. I needed witnesses. I needed people who'd seen with their own eyes that Ethan had never lived a single day at the farmhouse. My first stop was Mrs. Whitaker, my neighbor across the field, 72, sharp as a tack, with a porch swing that creaked like it had its own opinion. "Of course I'll testify," she said before I'd even finished explaining. "I've lived next to you 5 years, Charlotte, and I've never seen Ethan here for more than an hour. If he knows the difference between a lawnmower and a washing machine, I'll eat my hat." She even chuckled, recalling the ice storm last winter. "You hauled firewood in the snow, remember?" If he was living here, where was he then? Drinking cocoa in Atlanta. I wrote it all down, had her sign and date it. My hands shook slightly as I realized this was real. This was building a case. At the post office, the clerk pulled up change of address records. Ethan's name had never been attached to my address until just last month. He printed out a statement, slid it across the counter like he was sliding me a secret. At the utility office, the manager confirmed. Every account, power, water, internet, had been in my name since day one. He stamped a document for me. At the feed and supply store, the owner laughed outright when I asked if Ethan had ever bought anything. Sweetheart, if that boy had ever set foot in here, I'd remember. He doesn't know hay from horse feed. One by one, the pieces piled up on my passenger seat. Affidavits, statements, signatures. My case was no longer just mine. It had witnesses. It had weight. That evening, as I was sorting receipts into manila folders, my phone buzzed, a number I didn't recognize. "Ms. Hayes?" a low voice asked. "You don't know me. I used to work at Harrington and Cole, your brother's law firm." My pulse quickened. "Yes? I saw your name years ago, on your father's will, and then I saw it disappear." I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. "Disappear?" He hesitated. "I made a copy before they let me go. If you want it, meet me tomorrow. 10 a.m. at River Street Cafe." The next morning I drove downtown, nerves buzzing as the Savannah River glimmered in the sunlight. The cafe smelled of fresh biscuits and coffee. In the back booth sat a man in his 40s, hair thinning, suit too big for his frame. "This is the original draft," he said quietly, sliding a manila envelope across the table. Inside were two versions of Dad's will. The first, my name and Ethan's, listed side by side as equal heirs. The second, my name scrubbed clean, replaced by Ethan's. Same date, same notary seal, different outcome. My stomach dropped. "I remember the day," the man continued. "Your stepmother came into the office, met with the senior partner. When she left, the draft had changed. I can testify to that if needed." I looked at him, speechless, gratitude and rage colliding in my chest. "Why are you helping me?" He gave a sad smile. "Because I saw what was happening, and because I have a daughter of my own. I wouldn't want her erased." I thanked him so many times he finally laughed. "Just win," he said. "That'll be thanks enough." By the time I drove back to the farmhouse, the passenger seat was stacked high. Deeds, mortgage records, tax receipts, witness statements, utility bills, postal records. The original draft of Dad's will. It looked less like paperwork and more like a war map. That night, Caroline came over. We sat side by side at the oak table, folders spread between us. "This is strong," she said, flipping through, "but they'll try to paint you as selfish, cold. We need to show the times you did help Ethan." I dug into another folder, pulled out a check stub. $5,000 I'd used to clear Ethan's credit card debt 3 years ago. An email chain where I introduced him to a friend offering a job. He never replied. "This isn't about refusing family," I said quietly. "It's about them crossing a line." Caroline nodded. "Then we'll draw our own." That night, I stepped onto the porch. The Georgia night was thick with the scent of jasmine and the hum of crickets. The field stretched out silver in the moonlight, the farmhouse standing solid and still behind me. For a moment, I let myself breathe. Because this wasn't just about land, it was about the right to exist in the story my father left behind. And I was ready to fight for it. The courthouse in downtown Savannah stood like a fortress. Tall stone columns, heavy oak doors, windows that caught the morning sun and glared like watchful eyes. I arrived early, binder clutched to my chest. My best friend Caroline walked beside me, her navy suit pressed sharp, her heels clicking against the marble steps. She'd warned me, "Don't try to dress to impress. Dress to tell the truth." So I wore a simple cream blouse, black slacks, hair pulled back in a no-nonsense ponytail. My palms were damp anyway. In the hallway outside courtroom 2B, I saw them. Ethan, polished as ever, tailored gray suit, cufflinks gleaming, hair slicked back like he'd just stepped out of a magazine ad. At his side, Linda in pearls and a silk blouse, her hand resting proudly on his arm. Neither of them looked at me. When the bailiff called our case, we filed into the room. "Hayes versus Hayes," the clerk read. "Plaintiffs, Ethan and Linda Hayes. Defendant, Charlotte Hayes. Claim, breach of implied inheritance agreement. The judge, a tall man with silver hair and half-moon glasses, peered down at us, calm but unreadable. Proceed. Ethan's lawyer, a smooth-talking man named Talbot, stood first. His voice carried like honey, warm, persuasive, practiced. My clients merely wish to honor the true intent of the late Mr. Hayes, he said. It was always understood that his son, Ethan, would inherit the family property. Unfortunately, Ms. Hayes, the defendant, has refused to recognize this, choosing instead to cling to land that was never truly hers. Linda dabbed her eyes with a tissue, sighing for effect. Ethan lowered his gaze, playing the part of the wronged son. Then Ethan himself took the stand. Charlotte and I were close once. He began smoothly, his voice soft enough to tug at strangers' hearts. But after Dad died, she changed. She told me I could come live at the farmhouse until I got back on my feet. But when I showed up, he paused, swallowing, as if holding back emotion. She locked the door. I slept in my car that night, my own sister treating me like a stranger. The courtroom murmured. Even the judge leaned forward slightly. Ethan let the silence hang, his eyes glistening. It's not about money, he finished. It's about honoring Dad, about family. I felt my stomach twist. Every word was a lie. But Caroline's hand brushed mine steady. Don't react, not yet. When it was my turn, Caroline guided me to the witness stand. She opened the binder and began laying out the evidence like pieces on a chessboard. The deed, she said, holding it up, filed under Charlotte Hayes, sole owner. The judge studied it, nodded. The mortgage statements, every payment made by Ms. Hayes, the property tax receipts, again, all in her name. One by one, the documents stacked higher, thicker, undeniable. Talbot tried to object. Your Honor, paperwork does not negate an oral agreement. The judge raised a hand. Overruled. Continue. Caroline called witnesses. Mrs. Whitaker took the stand, her voice clear as a bell. I've lived next to Charlotte 5 years, and I've never once seen Ethan live there. Not one night. The postal clerk testified that Ethan's name had only been linked to the farmhouse in the last month. The utility manager confirmed every account was in my name alone. Even the feed store owner chuckled on the record. That boy wouldn't know a bag of seed if it hit him in the face. By the time Caroline laid down the stack of signed affidavits, Talbot was sweating. Ethan shifted in his seat, jaw tight. But Caroline wasn't finished. She reached into the binder, pulled out 2 sheets of paper, and handed them to the judge. These are 2 versions of the late Mr. Hayes's will, she said. One includes both children as heirs. The other, drafted the same day, mysteriously omits Charlotte Hayes entirely. The judge adjusted his glasses, scanning the pages. His brows drew together. Then Caroline called the ex-paralegal, the man who'd met me at River Street Cafe. He testified calmly, directly, about the day Linda visited the law office, how the draft changed after her meeting with the senior partner. The courtroom buzzed. Linda's lips pressed into a thin line, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Ethan stared at the floor. Finally, Caroline slid a small recorder across the evidence table. Your Honor, this is an audio recording taken in the courthouse hallway last week. Please listen. The judge put on headphones, pressed play. His face gave nothing away as the room held its breath. Then he removed the headphones, gaze sharpening on Ethan. Mr. Hayes, do you dispute that this is your voice? Ethan shifted. No, Your Honor, but... The judge cut him off. The statement is clear. I don't care about the house. I just don't want her to have it. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Linda looked at Ethan like she'd never seen him before. I sat frozen, heart pounding, as the weight of weeks, months, pressed into this one moment. The judge rapped his gavel once. I will review all evidence and issue a written decision within 30 days. Court adjourned. As we filed out, Ethan brushed past me without meeting my eyes. For a fleeting second, I searched his face for the boy I'd once shared Christmas mornings with, the brother who'd chased fireflies with me in the backyard, but all I saw was a stranger. Outside, the humid savanna air hit me like a cleansing wave. Caroline placed a hand on my shoulder. "You were steady," she said. "Clear. That matters." I nodded, staring up at the courthouse steps. "I don't want a settlement," I murmured. "I want the truth on record." "Then we'll keep fighting," Caroline replied. That night, back at the farmhouse, I opened the binder on my kitchen table. Pages of deeds, receipts, testimonies, my life here, in black and white. And for the first time since Dad's funeral, I felt something like strength stir inside me. Because this wasn't just about land, it was about refusing to be erased. And no matter what the court decided, I knew one thing. I had already claimed my place. The letter arrived on a rainy Thursday morning, thin, ordinary looking. But I stared at it like it was a live wire. I carried it to the kitchen table, set it down beside a half-empty mug of coffee, and just looked at it. My hands hovered over the envelope, then pulled back. Once I opened it, I would know. The cicadas outside buzzed faintly against the patter of rain. The house smelled of damp wood and the lavender candle I'd lit out of habit. Finally, with a shaky breath, I slid a knife under the seal. Superior Court of Chatham County. Decision of the court. My eyes scanned the first lines, the black letters blurring, then snapping into focus. The property at 129 Willow Creek Road remains in the sole ownership of the defendant, Charlotte Hayes. The plaintiff's claim of an implied inheritance agreement is without merit. The court further finds evidence of intentional misrepresentation in the plaintiff's filings and refers the matter to the district attorney for review. I read it once, twice, 3 times. And then the tears came, hot, silent, unstoppable. Not from sadness, but from the release of weeks of pressure I hadn't realized I'd been carrying in my shoulders, my jaw, my chest. I had won. An hour later, Caroline showed up, umbrella dripping on the porch. One look at my face and she grinned. "Let me guess," she said. Wordlessly, I handed her the letter. She skimmed it, nodding. Not just a win, a rebuke. The judge didn't just dismiss their claim. He called them out. "That's rare, Charlotte." I laughed through tears, the sound shaky but real. "It's over?" "For now," she said, "though the DA's review means they may face consequences." I nodded, unsure how I felt about that. Justice was one thing. Watching Ethan, my brother, face criminal charges was another. That afternoon, the phone rang. Caller ID, Linda Hayes. For a long moment, I just stared at it. Then I answered. Her voice was cool, clipped. "Well, you got what you wanted." I kept mine steady. What I wanted was the truth, and to keep what Dad left me. She sighed sharply. Family should come before property. I closed my eyes. Family should come before lies, but you made your choice. There was silence on the line, then a click. 2 days later, I saw Ethan in the grocery store parking lot. He was loading bags into the back of a rental car, rain spattering against his jacket. For a brief second, he looked almost like the boy I remembered. Wind-blown hair, a crooked half-smile. Then his eyes met mine and the mask dropped. "You could have let it go," he said. "You could have not tried to steal from me," I replied. His jaw tightened. He slammed the trunk shut, climbed into the car, and drove off without another word. I stood there for a long time, the rain soaking my hair, the words echoing in the empty lot. In the weeks that followed, the farmhouse felt different, lighter somehow, like the walls themselves had been holding their breath and could finally exhale. I fixed the sagging fence in the north pasture, repainted the porch railing, planted a new row of lavender along the walkway. Neighbors dropped by more often now. Mrs. Whitaker with a basket of peach preserves, the feed store owner with fresh eggs, even the mail carrier who shyly offered congratulations. One afternoon, Caroline sat with me on the porch, sipping sweet tea as the sun dipped low. "You fought for this place," she said softly. And you won. Don't forget that. I looked out at the fields, the grass swaying in the warm Georgia breeze. For the first time in months, the word home didn't feel like a question. It felt like an answer. I kept all the court papers in the same binder I'd used to collect my evidence, not because I wanted to relive it, but because I wanted a record. Proof that even when the people you expect to protect you turn against you, you can stand your ground. Sometimes I imagined a future day when someone else, some neighbor, some friend, would sit at their own kitchen table with a thick envelope and a racing heart, and I'd hand them that binder and say, "Here, this might help." That night, I lit a single lamp, brewed a cup of tea, and stepped onto the porch. The rain had stopped, and the air was thick with the scent of wet earth and lavender. The moon was high, silver light spilling across the fields, painting the farmhouse in shades of quiet peace. I sat there for a long while, breathing it in. I had fought for this place. I had kept it. And as the night wrapped around me, one truth settled deeper than ever before. Winning wasn't just about land. It was about refusing to let someone else write my story for me. Winning the case didn't feel the way I thought it would. There was no parade down Main Street, no confetti falling from the courthouse steps. Just me, standing in my kitchen the next morning, pouring coffee into the same chipped mug, listening to the same cicadas humming outside the window, but the air felt different, lighter. Still, beneath the relief, there was an ache that no court ruling could fix. The kind of ache that comes when people you've known your whole life turn into strangers. In the weeks after the verdict, the silence from Linda was complete. No calls, no letters. My father's side of the family drifted with her, their absence like a deliberate shadow. Ethan, I heard through neighbors, had left Savannah entirely. He sold his car, packed what little he owned, and moved to Phoenix. No forwarding address, no explanation. Just gone. At first, the quiet was a blessing. No more summons slipped into my mailbox. No more lawyers twisting my father's words. No more nights staring at the ceiling, wondering how far they'd go to erase me. But silence has a way of amplifying the echoes you carry inside. Sometimes, as I weeded the lavender rows or scrubbed the porch railings, memories would rise unbidden. Christmas mornings when Ethan and I tore into gifts side by side. Summer evenings when Dad grilled burgers and Mom brought out peach pie. For a moment, those memories glowed warm. But then they flickered and dimmed, like photographs curling in the fire. Those moments belonged to another family, one I no longer recognized. I threw myself into the farm. The land didn't care about betrayal. The hens still clucked at dawn, the fences still sagged, the fields still needed tending. Work became my healing. Every nail I hammered into the fence line, every lavender bush I pruned, every basket of eggs I carried inside, it was all proof I was still standing. Neighbors became my anchor. Mrs. Whitaker stopped by often, sometimes with lemon bars, sometimes just to sit on the porch swing in comfortable silence. The feed store owner saved the freshest seed for me, slipping it across the counter with a wink. Even the post office clerk, who had once looked nervous handing me Ethan's false address forms, now asked how the farm was holding up. Bit by bit, a new kind of family took shape, not one tied by blood, but by presence, by choice. In late November, an envelope arrived in the mail. The handwriting on the front was familiar, looping, elegant. My cousin Emily. Inside was a short note. Charlotte, I'm hosting Christmas dinner this year. I know things are strained, but you're welcome. No pressure. Just think about it. I held the letter for a long time. Part of me wanted to go, to prove I could still sit at the table without bitterness. Another part of me knew the wounds were still raw, that forgiveness wasn't something you could rush. In the end, I mailed her a thank you card and declined. Not out of anger, but out of honesty. I wasn't ready. Winter came early that year. Frost dusted the lavender fields. The farmhouse creaked under icy winds, and the land settled into its quiet season. I used the time to repair the barn roof, repaint the kitchen cabinets, and start a project I hadn't dared before: writing. Not for anyone else, not for court, just for me. I wrote about the trial, about the betrayal, about the night I found Dad's voice preserved on that tape. I wrote about the way the courtroom smelled of polish and paper, the way Ethan's eyes had slid past mine like I was a stranger, the way the judge's gavel had sounded like both an ending and a beginning. On paper, the story shifted. It wasn't just about loss anymore. It was about drawing a line and saying, "This far, no farther." By February, I saw Ethan again, not in court, not in the grocery store, at the hardware shop of all places. He stood in the aisle, thinner than I remembered, his jacket worn at the elbows. When he noticed me, he hesitated, then walked over. "I heard the DA dropped it," he said quietly. "No charges." I nodded. I figured. He looked down at the floor. "I didn't think it would go that far. Mom pushed harder than I did." A humorless laugh slipped out before I could stop it. "You could have stopped it. You didn't." His jaw tightened. "Yeah, I know." Then he turned and walked away. I watched him go, realizing something. I no longer felt anger, just distance, like watching a ship sail out of harbor knowing it wouldn't return. By spring, I started hosting small gatherings at the farmhouse. Neighbors, friends from the farmer's market, local artisans. We sat around the fire pit, passed plates of cornbread, swapped stories late into the night. It wasn't the family I was born into, but it was a family all the same, one built on showing up, not taking. I still keep the binder of court documents in the cabinet by my desk, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. A reminder that standing your ground is never easy. A reminder that even when the people closest to you turn away, you can still build something strong enough to last. And a reminder that healing isn't about going back to how things were. It's about finding peace in how things are now. That evening, as the sun sank low over the lavender rose, the fields glowed purple and gold. I sat on the porch with a cup of tea, the farmhouse behind me, the air thick with jasmine. For the first time in a long while, I didn't feel like I was waiting for the next blow to fall. I had lost some things I could never get back, but I had kept the one thing I could not replace: my home and myself. Because in the end, you don't need permission to protect what's yours, and you don't need everyone to understand. All that matters is knowing you stood your ground, with honesty, with courage, and with the quiet strength my father always said was mine. Charlotte Hayes didn't just keep her father's house. She kept her dignity, her truth, and her place in the story. Because the truth can be buried, but it never disappears. Family may betray you. A brother may drag you into court, but justice stands with those who refuse to be erased. Charlotte proved one thing: you don't need permission to protect what's yours. You don't need everyone to understand or approve. What matters is holding on to your self-respect and never letting someone else write your story. This isn't just about land. It's about courage, dignity, and the quiet strength of a woman who stood her ground. If this story spoke to your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to support more powerful journeys, because the truth deserves to be heard.